Need to change this on a systemic level. And the only way that we can do that is if we are able to stay in the conversation long enough.
This is The Deep Dive with Adam Roa.
What is up, Deep Divers? Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Adam Roa, and today I want to dive into what's going on the planet right now with the protests, the riots, the misinformation of media, the wildness that is the United States and the world for a larger extent right now. And I want to do that through a lens of personal development and give you a really grounded metaphor and analogy to what happens on an individual level for human transformation as learned through personal development. Because what I believe is that personal development is something that we have had the privilege to really develop and learn over the last couple decades. The reason we've had that is because based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have started to move collectively out of the need to just for basics like food, water, shelter, warmth. Online is giving a strange sort of community actually for everybody. And so as we're moving up these ladders, there's been more and more people that are getting into that top tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is self-actualization. And so that's the creative expression and who am I on a soul level? Why am I here? Those sorts of questions, which in many ways is now increasing. The number of people who can do that is increasing because of technological advances and so many other factors. And so we understand how we work as human beings on a biological, physiological, emotional level more than we ever have. We get it, and we're developing amazing. With technology too, the ability to read the chemical reactions in the body related to emotions, to do brain scans related to emotions, to understand the roles of the amygdala and prefrontal cortex and all of this in our brains and our bodies. So it's very important that during this time of massive unrest, that we don't lose sight of the principles and fundamentals of personal development that we have had the privilege to learn over the last several decades, especially because if we simply go back into the cycles that have been repeated throughout history, we are doomed to repeat it, which means that we may see small concessions, we may see a few simple changes that ultimately don't actually change the system, which is the structure of the system and how it's set up is actually the underlying issue that is causing so much of this. So it's very important for us to change the system. And I'll probably talk about that in a future podcast. But right now, what my focus is on is I want to give you a really simple breakdown so you can have some understanding of what's going on and how we can be active participants in it in a really healthy way. And before I dive right into that, I would love to remind you that this podcast is something that I do out of love. I haven't monetized it or anything like that. And my simple ask is that you please help me share it out. Share it out, send it to a friend or a family member, post about it on social media. Definitely subscribe. It only takes a couple seconds, but subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you are. And if you could leave a review on Spotify or iTunes or leave a comment here on YouTube if you're watching the video, that would really help and it would mean a lot. So that's my ask and I appreciate it. Thank you. So, going back into personal development. So I have had the opportunity to facilitate personal development retreats, workshops, one-on-one coaching clients. And I've had the opportunity to do this for many years now. And one of the things that I will facilitate often is the healing of trauma. Trauma gets stored in the body, right? PTSD is an extreme form of that. But you could say that any trauma stored in the body is essentially PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And when it stores in your body, it stores in the cells of your body, it becomes it's attached to that trauma is our beliefs, right? So I'll use myself as an example. As someone who was molested at a young age, I developed that stored in my body because I didn't have the tools. I didn't feel safe to process that experience, so much so that it actually became a repressed memory for decades. And but the memory of it still lived in my unconscious, and it lived in my body. And you can imagine beliefs attached to that, such as I'm not safe, right? And so unraveling of that has taken many, many years and is in many ways still a part of my process as I develop, because it touches so many different aspects of my life. Now, in that situation where we go into a workshop, and let's say that I am holding space, okay? Holding space. You may have heard that term before. Holding space for someone to begin to process the emotions of being molested. Oftentimes, and a very common technique is to, as a facilitator, to take on the role of the abuser. So essentially, I would say, okay, I am now the person who molested you. You get to express to me. Say all the things that you never got to say. Let it out. And then I hold space and I allow for this person to access that part of themselves where that trauma is stored. Open that door, open that Pandora's box, and let it out. That's called, we create a safe container. And so in that process, what it means to hold space is that my role is to not take it personally. To not take it personally. If they start yelling and screaming at me, if they say, you mother effer, blah, 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 like, it's important for me to not take that personally, because the moment that I start taking it personally, that means that somewhere in me, I'm getting triggered. My emotions start rising. And then I start going into my own fight or flight emotional response. And oftentimes that begins to project outwards. Okay. And so the ability to facilitate, it's often overlooked, but there's a reason why good coaches are able to do it, is because of a development of a practice and an ability to process emotions and handle them and be with other people's emotions at a very high level, so that in a situation like that, we don't have to take it personally. Now, there's a boundary to this, right? Because if this person now suddenly starts to punch me or spit on me or whatever, I may at that point say, yo, done. Not okay, crossing the boundary. This is not within the space I'm willing to hold any longer. And so what we have happening right now on the planet, okay? So understanding and looking at this as we're all fractals, as within, so without. What's happening internally for me on an individual level can be seen mirrored in the collective. And so what we have happening now is the Black community has taken the space and also is being given permission. Not like that. I mean, they're taking it and they're being given permission in a lot of ways to open Pandora's box for all of the trauma that is stored collectively in their system from years and years and years of injustice and racism and just being mistreated and police brutality. That Pandora's box is now open. one of the issues that I see happening on the planet right now is a lot of people in the white communities, or white passing, as they'll call it, are feeling incredibly scared and incredibly like they're the enemy. They don't know what to say. They don't know if they're allowed to have a voice, et cetera, right? And many people in the white community are holding space for this process of healing and moving through the trauma. They're saying, okay, I got this. I'm not going to take this personally. And there are a lot of people in the white community who are taking it personally. They are believing that I never signed up for this. The people are like, I'm not racist. So I never signed up for this. Why are you pointing your anger at me? And we have a lot of people who have not developed the skills, the tools, the understanding, the knowledge for what's even happening from this perspective. And so they're saying, I'm not the facilitator. I don't want to hold this space. And it feels unfair to me that it's being projected at me, and they don't have the tools to process that experience. And so they're going into fight or flight. And because oftentimes what happens in fight or flight, what we want to do when we are in that fight or flight is just alleviate the thing that is putting us in there. And so that can look like feeling guilted or shamed into agreeing with one side of the argument, or literally pointing the finger back across to the other side and saying, this is your fault. I feel so uncomfortable. I feel so angry. This is your fault. And I saw a video online yesterday where this woman must have been in her 50s, has driven to the police station and is being followed and filmed by a black woman because the black woman apparently passed her on the left, and the white woman called her the N-word from her car to the other because she did it. And then on camera, going to the police station to basically, and having a breakdown, this white woman, and just saying, I can't take this anymore. I'm sorry for the looting. I can't take this anymore. And like going into a full-blown breakdown. And she used the N-word. And she even says at one point, you call each other that all the time, like talking to this black woman about the black community. And I have no idea if that woman is a racist in the sense of the most extreme. But I do know from observing that woman has gone into full fight or flight, is completely overwhelmed, can't take it anymore. And her response to someone passing her on the left was to attack with a racial slur. So we have people in the white community who are literally going on the attack because they don't know how to process all of the emotions that are happening, and in a lot of ways pointed at the white community, and rightfully so. But there's this, I didn't agree to facilitate. I don't know how to facilitate. I don't have the tools to facilitate aspect to this that is happening and leading to an incredible divide. Because on my social media, especially as someone who is a stand for equality and racial justice, the accounts I follow, the people who follow me are generally of that mindset. And therefore there's an echo chamber where I see all these posts all day long about Black Lives Matter, equality, etc. Understand that I have been on actual phone calls with people who are not racist, who are from the white community, who are like, I've gotten off of social media. I don't post anything. It's too intense. And I feel like if I say anything else that's wrong, I'm going to be seen as being racist. I'm going to be seen as this or that. And it's not even worth it. And so while I want to say that, because I imagine if you're listening to this, you're probably in the same boat as me, where most of your feed is about equality and everything. And I want you to be aware that there is a massive divide that is happening. There are a lot of people who are not feeling safe and are retreating from the conversation as they go into fight, flight, or freeze. They are fleeing this conversation. And if they feel attacked, their natural biological response is going to want to be to defend themselves. And that divisiveness is what has caused this whole situation to begin with. The system that is in place wants the divisiveness because it feeds off of the divisiveness. The media channels benefit from divisiveness. The political system benefits from divisiveness. It's something that we get to recognize, and then through that recognition, awareness gives us choice. Through the recognition of how human beings respond, that we've learned through personal development, and through an understanding of what it means to really hold space and facilitate for emotion to come up, to move through and not take it personally, that is how we actually shift out of divisiveness and be able to be in unity the way that a facilitator and someone that's being facilitated for is able to be processed. Now, some tools for you to be able to hold more space is your practices, your self-love practices of filling up your own cup, your ability to meditate and sit with the emotions that are coming up, your ability to journal and write out the emotions that are coming up, the techniques and tools for somatically in your body moving the emotion through so it doesn't just build up and it doesn't become trauma stored in the body. All of these various things. And those are the three starting places: physical movement, meditation, journaling. For me, those are the three starting places. Then you have community, etc. If you notice, my understanding of this is why I have created the things that I've created, because I feel like they are the most important aspects. My book, Treat Yourself Like Someone You Love, is literally breaking down those three tools at a deeper level so that you can have an understanding of them. My community, Create, thecreatecommunity.com, that is created because community is a huge aspect to create a safe container for the expression so that people can speak this, and where we have classes like breathwork and yoga to help move this stuff through, where we have events where we can talk about it openly. I'm creating those things to give you, and I hope that you're taking advantage of them. I imagine a number of you listening to this have joined the Create community or have read the book or whatever. But I'm saying that because I want you to see how much I believe and truly believe that these fundamentals are what we need to be applying right now. And you have everything available to you, from podcasts, whether mine or others, podcasts, YouTube videos, to help support you in this. And what you get to do is, when you feel yourself hitting your limit of what the space you can hold, disconnect, process, utilize these tools, and then reconnect. Get back in and continue to hold the space, continue to be in the conversation. Because what has happened is, in the past, as we look at history, is people hold space and they hit that point where they're like, I can't deal with it anymore. And then they disconnect and they never reconnect. And then all of a sudden, all the anger and everything, it slows down. It gets forgotten about. People get a little bit of change, a little bit. And then, okay, it's all right now. Something changed. Good. Okay, I don't have to be upset anymore. And just the desire to alleviate the discomfort becomes so heightened that things that don't actually change the system, but are just actually small concessions within the system, meaning that because the system needs the inequality to operate, it will continue. We need to change this on a systemic level. And the only way that we can do that is if we are able to stay in the conversation long enough to see that happen. And the way that we continue to be able to be in that conversation is in understanding what's going on, and then be able to apply the appropriate tools for ourselves individually and support each other collectively to do that, to move through the emotion, to move through it, to get out of that limbic brain and the amygdala and get into the prefrontal cortex, where we have our slow thinking, rational thought that will allow us to actually design solutions in the long term. You're a part of that. The fact that you're listening to this means that you're trying, you're doing it. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. Thank you for continuing to educate yourself and learn so that we can show up as best we can during these times, because it is time for change. It is. We've outgrown the old system. I'm not even blaming the old system. I'm saying it worked up until a point. We've outgrown it. From a consciousness level, we are now ready for something that is omni-beneficial, something that works and allows for prosperity for everyone equally. Thank you for being a part of that conversation. Thank you for listening. Please help me spread this message. Share it out. Send it out on social media. And subscribe. Thank you so much. I want to remind you that always, in all ways, you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved.